Good morning. We are live on YouTube. We're going to bring in our Facebook groups. I've got Atlanta Falcons fans on all Falcons, and I've got Scott Kennedy Sports to make sure that we're hitting as many people as we possibly can on Coast to Coast Football. And good morning, everyone. We are live on Coast to Coast Football. My name is Scott Kennedy. I am your host. This is my co-host over here, Nick Kendell. He is in Seattle. I am in Atlanta. So we are Coast to Coast Football with your football coverage today. And I'm excited, Nick. Sometimes you're wondering, it's like, okay, how long are we going to talk? We got an hour. We're beating the same horse. There is so much going on in the last week that we won't even get to all of it. We'll focus on some of the things, and we'll just have to save more for another show. But I think our first show of Coast to Coast Football, Nick, was the quarterback carousel. Where are these guys going to end up? And we're starting to get some answers, and we're starting to get even some more intrigue going on. We're going to dive into all of that, the big contracts, the guys who want big contracts, franchise tags, non-franchise tags, and we may even get into some combine and draft over the next hour or so. But first, Nick, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty well. Hopeful that the internet can hold out today one more day before the extender it provides to be a solution for my internet woes. But yeah, doing pretty well. The coffee I just poured it, so it is way too hot right now, so I gotta let it cool a bit. But doing well. Happy it's Wednesday, ready to get to the weekend. It's been a long week.
Yeah, it is only Wednesday. So
Yeah.
yesterday was quite a day. With the news, the franchise tag deadline's coming out, and we'll just start. I put his picture on the cover art for this, which was Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens used the non-exclusive franchise tag, which is kind of a poison pill to a certain extent, Nick. It's like, you know what? We're going to let other teams negotiate. And if we like the deal, we'll just go ahead and sign that one. Ooh, that one's kind of evil. That tag is, because again, it's making you go ahead and find out what you can get out there, and then we'll go ahead and sign that. It's lazy. It's a lazy man's work. It's the lazy man's option. You don't see it very often. And then if we don't like it, well, we'll get 2 first-rounders in return. So someone could come up and give a huge contract like the Cleveland Browns did with Deshaun Watson, who is trending right now on my Twitter feed because of this contract he signed last year. And if the Ravens decided, no, that's too much for us, then they would get 2 first-round picks in return. The 2 first-round picks in return is a bargain for Lamar Jackson. But is the contract going to be too much? You know, that's what it seems like. He wants Deshaun Watson money, and you don't know if there are other teams willing to give Deshaun Watson money of $250 million guaranteed over 5 years. That's still relatively unprecedented, Nick.
Yeah. And there's been some talk, unfounded, but still talk of collusion of the league, saying that we're not going to touch Lamar Jackson and we're never going to give out a contract like Deshaun Watson's ever again. I mean, that's one thing the owners and the NFL have tried to not get into, those guaranteed contracts. So Watson got one, obviously had the no trade clause in a weird situation, but this is different. Also, the thing that makes this fascinating to follow is that Lamar is his own agent. So now he's going to be negotiating these contracts against all these teams on the market. I mean, it could get pretty interesting. I know I'm not saying Lamar is not capable of doing that, but that's a career. You know, that's somebody's profession that he is now going to have to deal with doing this offseason. So will be interesting to follow. It doesn't make sense that so many teams are like, yeah, we're not interested, when you don't even, I mean, let's say I want a non-guaranteed contract. Well, you know, come back to us. But the fact that we had all this immediate non-interested parties is odd to me.
Well, again, and we don't know exactly how much that means. We're not interested at $250 million guaranteed, you know, because there are a lot of guarantees in the contracts. And we talk about that all the time. You know, you see, didn't Russell Wilson sign a $250 million contract? You know, it was something close like that, but it's not that at all. It's more like, it was more like 4 years, 150, you know, somewhere in that neighborhood, because it was guaranteed. And what are you thinking? But you just look at the guaranteed money and what's he going to get? So there is guaranteed money in there without a doubt. So, you know, if Deshaun Watson had signed a 6-year, $350 million guarantee or $350 million contract at $60 million a year annually with 250 guarantees, are these guys still losing their minds? Or is that just too much money if $250 million guarantee? Because there's other teams, especially on an average per year value, that aren't that far off on that. I mean, that's the kind of money Aaron Rodgers is making. Russell Wilson's in the 40 plus million. Geno Smith is now in the 40 million range. Daniel Jones is now in the 40 million range. So is it the fully guaranteed contract? Well, what if it's fully guaranteed? It's the guaranteed money that matters. Is it the 250 million that's too much to pay? Because he's not going to be alone. It might not be Lamar Jackson that gets it, but there's going to be another $250 million guaranteed contract coming in the next 2 or 3 years, Nick.
I think it's the ability to get out of the deal somewhat at later years, because when it's 100% guaranteed, that means that the salary cap hit is full across every single year of that contract. So you have no flexibility to kick the can or renegotiate or, extend. Anything like that is out the window. Those little tricks that these teams like to do to create cap space year by year and also negotiating power year by year against that player. So again, it seems like the NFL at large is saying absolutely no way. We are not going to give that 100% guaranteed contract. And the other elephant in the room, or I guess not elephant in the room, but thing we have to talk about is that Lamar Jackson's play style with it's, Deshaun Watson, pocket quarterback, for sure, a pocket quarterback. Lamar Jackson, he's been great 2 years ago, but the last couple of years, this year too, missed a lot of the season after getting injured. So it's not just, you're paying for the guy who's going to be taking less hits, that big kind of money. And there are studies out there. I could have, done whole research on, the quarterbacks who run versus that don't run and what does the careers look like. Granted, the game has changed a bit, that and the sample sizes are probably small enough that you can't draw anything too large. Your R value wouldn't be very high on that statistical analysis. But I think that's another part of this equation that we need to talk about, is that Lamar's play style, maybe teams are more concerned about, having that 100% on the books for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I agree. And part of it is if his legs start to go, what's he worth? That becomes the question. So, and the problem is you start running into, I'm being surprised by some of these numbers that I see that I just need to stop. I just need to stop being surprised. I see Geno Smith gets 3 years, 105 million, 50 upfront guaranteed. He's getting paid this year more than he's made in 10 years. That's a big swing by the Seattle Seahawks for what they're doing with Geno Smith, considering who he's been for 10 years, to then go and give him that kind of money. You go to Daniel Jones, who we're not going to pick up his 5th-year option. Well, boy, that would have been a much cheaper deal, huh? It was a risk. Okay, he played really well. Now you've got 40 million a year, I think is what he's getting. And at least guaranteed over the next 3 years, 120 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. We were talking, is he going to get 30? Is he going to be in the 25 to 30 range? And then he gets 40. Yes. Who am I missing? Derek Carr. Derek Carr, the one thing that I think I was right about out of all this wasn't the money, because he's getting paid, I think, more than I was expecting him to by the New Orleans Saints, but that there was no reason to trade for him. There was no reason to give up a draft pick for Derek Carr when he's going to hit free agency and then just sign him. So that part was, I think, as far as the money goes, is the only part I've been right about on what these guys are getting paid. That said, what was the second best offer for Deshaun Watson? If we're going to use Deshaun Watson as a benchmark here, what was the second best option? It only takes one team. If the Raiders come in and say, Lamar Jackson, we'll give you 200 guaranteed over 4 years, 50 million a year, we'll do that. And we'll make it a 6-year contract with 2 void years, whatever. But you're getting $200 million. It only takes one team. But to use Deshaun Watson as a benchmark, well, one team may have lost their minds. That's why they have a cap to begin with, because these owners can't control themselves. There's your collusion, Nick.
Yeah. And just to talk about the Raiders fit for Lamar, I've seen that that's one team. There's been some reports that, hey, they haven't said no. But the thing about the Raiders is that they are one of the more cash poor teams in the entire NFL. You have to be able to put a lot of cash in escrow if you're going to pay that massive 100% guaranteed contract. So I don't know how. I mean, I guess they could take out loans and stuff to do it.
But how do you handle that then? You guarantee it across multiple years. Yeah, rather than say, here's a big signing bonus and then I'm going to stretch out your contract. So they've got revenue. They just don't seem to have cash piled up. They don't have reserves. Well, their revenue will pay for it. So it actually makes more sense for the Raiders to give a guaranteed contract in order to not have to dole out a big signing bonus, Nick.
Yeah, I guess that's true because the mechanism of most guarantees is via the signing bonus, but they can just guarantee the base salary. So I guess that does make sense. But maybe Lamar also would want the signing bonus, the money. And it's kind of the question of you see on Twitter stuff like, would you rather have $1 million now or 10,000 the rest of your life or something like that? He's like, oh, if you give me the money now, I can invest it and make more money off of it than over the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's usually right. Plus taxes aren't going down.
Yeah.
So I still wouldn't mind the Bobby Bonilla contract. Bobby Bonilla Day on May whatever that is, and just getting $1 million for 30 years. I wouldn't mind that one either.
Yeah.
Let's say good morning to some folks. We've been long-winded already this morning. Let's say good morning to some folks in the chat that have come in. Big Al says, good morning. Ready to listen to your guys' opinion on the Lamar Jackson situation. Appreciate it. And, you mentioned collusion, and it hit me as I said it. This might not be collusion against Lamar Jackson, but the salary cap is collusion. That's what it is. We are getting together and saying we cannot control ourselves as individuals, so we are going to artificially hold down what we're going to pay these guys with a salary cap. That's collusion. Now, if you want to take it
balance.
What?
For the competitive balance of the league, Scott.
Yeah, right. Sure it is. For the competitive balance, because some guys want to compete harder than others.
Yeah.
So good morning, Big Al. Michael Ranquillo coming in. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on Coast to Coast Football. Good morning. See that Buckham shirt that he's wearing, that Broncos orange he's got. Dave Glassman coming in. Says, morning, Broncos fam and football fanatics. We got a bunch of Broncos fans in here. Joe Cannon, resident Atlanta Falcons fan, coming in. Great morning, Scott and Nick. He's coming in over on Facebook. Dom Jaramillo coming in. He's a big Georgia and Denver Broncos fan. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick. Have a great day to you as well. Chris Walker coming in over on Facebook. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Van Nostrand. Good morning, y'all. Roderick Cook says, I'm glad I'm here. Looking forward to your insights. And Roderick missed us, so he caught us up on, if you happen to catch us after the fact, leave a comment. I'll find you, especially on YouTube. I go through and check all the comments. Roderick found us after the facts. Clayton Huron says, morning, guys. Been a while since I've watched this show. Smash that like button and share. Absolutely. What kind of coffee? Actually, I've got my Lion Coffee. So lioncoffee.com from Patrick out in Hawaii, who sends us and keeps us well caffeinated. And he says, talking about Lamar Jackson, he might not get that money. He's been injured a lot. Got to stay on the field. And that's one of the big ones with your, as you mentioned, with the fully guaranteed contracts. And, if I'm going to dump $50 million a year into a guy, I don't want him to be coming off of injuries the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's a risk, no doubt, with Lamar Jackson there. So we'll see how it plays out. This is going to be fascinating. It's going to be the actual topic of the entire offseason, unless something happens. I guess we haven't even talked about Aaron Rodgers yet. That could be some of it too. But I don't know if you're like me, Scott. Maybe I have the fatigue because of the Broncos last year, but I'm exhausted by Aaron Rodgers at this point. So Lamar,
yeah, I don't follow that too much, honestly. It's like I'll keep an eye on okay, he's visiting here. That's news. But after that, I don't follow it, detail by detail. And Aaron Rodgers is on this show talking, and I don't care. Who I do care about though is Mark Schrader coming in on Facebook. He says, good morning. I care where Aaron Rodgers is going to end up, and I care on our quarterback carousel. You said the New York Jets, and that was in January. I think that was 2 months ago, probably. You said, watch out. New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers make a lot of sense. And it is moving in that direction, Nick.
Yeah, it does seem to be moving in that way. The representatives are meeting with Rodgers. It's a team that is desperate for quarterback help, and they have Nathaniel Hackett there now, who is apparently buddy with Rodgers. So they are trying the Broncos plan last year, but with Hackett, the offensive coordinator, instead of the head coach. And it sounds like it might happen. So it will be wild to see how it plays out. But it could be another great quarterback joining the AFC, which is just unbelievably loaded. I mean, Scott, let me turn this around on you. Who's the best quarterback in the NFC right now? If Rodgers leaves, Tom Brady left, I mean, is it Dak Prescott? Is it
Why did Brock Purdy come to mind right away?
Oh no. Oh no. Is it Geno Smith? I mean, God.
Geno Smith played really well. We just got done talking about him. Let's see. Dak Prescott's pretty good. Daniel Jones is you could consider him up and coming. He's certainly getting paid like he's one of those guys. Jared Goff played really well. Detroit last year. Let's see. Minnesota. Derek Carr is the best in the NFC South as it stands right now. So, yeah, I mean, when you go through, okay, who are the best young quarterbacks in the league right now? Even the best quarterbacks, it's easy. You go Mahomes, you go Allen up in Buffalo. You talk about Herbert up over in LA. It just kind of keeps going that way. So yeah, it's I grew up 80s and 90s. It was like 17 straight NFC Super Bowl wins. It comes in cycles, Nick. It does. It cycles through. The AFC dominance of sorts, it'll never reach the level that it did in the 80s and 90s when the Redskins won 3. The 49ers and Cowboys were splitting a bunch of them. The Giants were solid there at the time. It was, and then someone else may have snuck one in, but I think they won 15 or 16 straight coming out of, I may have been in second grade when the Raiders just whipped the Redskins. And that may have been the last time the AFC won one for a long time. Let me see here. Here's Clayton has a double-sided question. Were you guys surprised by any of the franchise tags? Or who didn't get tagged? Yes, I was. If I'm not mistaken, Draymond Jones did not get tagged.
No, he did not.
Okay, wanted to make sure. I'm like, we didn't talk about that last night. I'm a little surprised Draymond Jones, interior defensive lineman, 3-4 defensive end, 4-3 defensive tackle, versatile guy. I'm a little surprised he didn't get tagged. I'm also surprised Caleb McGarry, right tackle, Atlanta Falcons, did not get tagged. It doesn't mean he's going to hit free agency. It means they could be really close to a deal anyway, but you don't know. And unless it happens over the next week, Caleb McGarry is going to be a free agent. That surprises me. It also surprises me a bit. Now, maybe it shouldn't. I've been saying I wouldn't tag Draymond Jones for 4 months. I've been saying that. I don't think he's worth $19 million. Maybe the Broncos agree, Nick.
Yeah, we'll see what the Albert Breer yesterday said. Draymond Jones and Javon Hargrave's contracts, our market is going to be approaching $20 million a year, just under that. So that's what the tag is at. Sounds like the Broncos weren't willing to get up, to that 17, 18 range. And I would expect Draymond to get that on the open market, especially with teams having a lot of cash, some teams having a lot of cash to spend, and Draymond being a 26-year-old top 10 interior pass rusher. I mean, there's a value for that. You're going to have to overpay because he is I don't want to say liability, but he's not good against the run. We'll put it that way. But he's going to get paid. His youth and his position, he's an impact player in that regard. So somebody will let him walk. And I am also somewhat surprised about Caleb McGarry. We've said it on here a few times, though. The scheme protected him as much as any player in the league this last year. Not a lot of true drop back sets. And when he did have to have true drop back sets, it was a mixed bag. So I think the Falcons will still work it out. But not paying him, what was the tag for offensive line? $19 million a year, $20 million a year?
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yep.
I think he'll probably get somewhere in the 14 to 17 range.
I think that's right for both of them, honestly. Now, which brings up the next question. Denver Broncos, I've got $15 million. Who makes my team better? Draymond Jones or Caleb McGarry / Jawan Taylor at right tackle?
Scott, this is going to come real philosophical for me, but I think our offensive line is always only ever as good as its weakest player. But if you have a defensive lineman who wins consistently, all you need is one defensive lineman to win your rep and the entire unit wins. So I'm going to take the pass rusher. If they are the equal level player, the pass rusher is more valuable in my book. Now, that's being said,
I asked.
Yeah. Broncos have an offensive head coach. They've had a terrible offense for years and years. They've had a right tackle quandary since 2012 when Orlando Franklin went off to the Chargers, maybe 2013. So I could see the Broncos instead paying a right tackle instead of Draymond Jones, just to mix things up because it's been so bad in Denver. I personally would rather have the pass rusher, the top level or a highly paid pass rusher versus a highly paid offensive tackle. But I think the Broncos could go the other way.
Yeah, and here's what's interesting is between the two teams, the Broncos and the Falcons, that trade straight up for those guys might make both teams better. I think the Broncos need the right tackle more than they need Draymond Jones. And I think the Falcons would need Draymond Jones more than they would need a right tackle. They could replace McGarry more than they can find a running mate for Grady Jarrett. You go healthy Taquan Graham, Grady Jarrett, and then Draymond Jones, you're pretty solid up front. You're pretty solid up front now. Draymond Jones, there's more talent on that defense. I can find a replacement level player at defense and not drop off as much. But with Sean Payton and what he wants to do and the mobility of Caleb McGarry and his run blocking ability and just the toughness he would bring that has been so absent for the Broncos offensive line, I think those two guys switching sides would make both teams better. We'll see how it plays out. Real quick, want to come in with Gary Palmer coming in, getting us started on the Super Chats here. Appreciate that. Just a reminder, you can help support the show with Super Chats like Gary just did, or stars on Facebook. Gary says, good morning, Scott and Nick. Love the Coast to Coast show. We love you being here. So thank you very much, my friend. And let me see. Brandon comes in. He asks a question about a Falcons question. He says, so what would be the best for our future? Draft a quarterback or ride with Ritter? Now, there's been some smoke that the Falcons are talking about moving up, have been in chats with the Chicago Bears for the number 1 overall pick too. That could be coming from the Bears side, trying to get the best offer possible from another team, saying, well, I've got Atlanta on the horn and they're willing to send me an 8, a 2, and next year's number 1. Could all be BS. Personally, I think you go with Desmond Ridder this year, get a veteran backup. Jameis Winston wouldn't be a terrible guy to come in. I know that would trigger some Atlanta Falcons fans, understandably so. The guy's been a Buccaneer and a Saint. I get it, but just so you don't have to play against him, he's got about 125 quarterback rating against the Atlanta Falcons. It might be worth to just put him on the roster. That might be an extra win right there, just so he's not playing against you. But I would be willing to go and then hopefully get a fire-breathing edge with the number 8 pick if one of those is available, Nick.
I've said it 100 times. You took Desmond Ridder in the 3rd round last year, and he looks to be a competent quarterback. You can roll with him and play that cheap contract with him for a number of years, but you already made your first evaluation with him waiting until the 3rd round. And the league also made an evaluation on him, not taking him until the Falcons took him into the 3rd round. Right now, I'd say that if you traded him this offseason, you might be able to get back the exact same pick, if not maybe even a 3rd and a 5, given how he looked competency-wise. I think it's a good pick right now. But
yeah, I think for sure. I think you would absolutely get back at least a 3rd.
Yes.
For goodness sakes, you could upgrade that if you wanted to. And Falcons fans have taken to Desmond Ridder. I think the majority of Falcons fans, not that it matters what they think to the administration, but I think most want to see Desmond Ridder get a legit chance. It's like, okay, it costs you an 8-9 season instead of an 11-7 season. Well, okay. Most everybody's used to. It's not like we've been winning championships here in Atlanta a lot lately.
Yeah, but the reality is you've already made an evaluation on him, and you didn't see enough of him last year to really have a great evaluation. We're not talking like a Dak Prescott rookie year type of outcome from him last year. So that means you have to put in the work on this quarterback class, without a doubt. I mean, every team does it anyway, but I think you need to be putting in extra work on the quarterback class, specifically the top 4 in this class. And if you like one of them, if you come away super impressed and be like, listen, we like Desmond Ridder a lot, but this guy, let's just throw out CJ Stroud for whatever reason. Let's say we absolutely adore him. It's only going to cost us our 1st round next year to go get him. And then we have a cost-controlled quarterback for 5 years. And we could then keep Ridder for cheap on the back end or trade Ridder for more draft capital. You have to at least consider it. If you don't have the quarterback or if you don't have the known quarterback, you have to put in the work. It's the same thing I've said over and over again for the Broncos. I will say it for every single team. If you don't have a known franchise quarterback, you need to at least be looking over the available options.
I'd be real interested with Anthony Richardson backing up Desmond Ridder. Real interested, knowing that, okay, this is not a win now team possibly, but what can Anthony Richardson do with some time and seasoning with a redshirt year in an Arthur Smith offense that is going to let him run? The guy is 6'4" plus, 245 pounds. He can throw. His accuracy has not been good to this point, but that it's not a release problem. It's not an arm problem. It's just maybe a technique. This isn't Tim Tebow and his big windmill circle release throw. That's not the problem. So I'd be real interested. But this rolls into Dr. Van Nostrand saying, what would the Falcons fans prefer? Trade up for a quarterback in the draft or 2 first-round picks? I think they'd and a $250 million for Lamar. I think if they had their druthers, if those were your only 2 choices, I think they'd actually rather move up and get a quarterback than 2 first-round picks and a $250 million after watching the cap hell they've gone through and all the bad contracts. That scares the Falcons fans right now. A lot of them would love to see Lamar Jackson. And if Lamar Jackson came to Atlanta, he would be embraced immediately. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But initial reaction on this is Falcons fans want to go with Desmond Ridder and put the draft picks and free agency into the defense. That's what they want to see right now.
And maybe the offensive line. If Caleb McGarry leaves, it's something we've talked about a lot. That pick number, 8 overall, is a really good spot for the first tackle in this class. So, that kind of stinks because you're not really probably drastically improving the team. Yeah.
You're not improving.
Unless you are.
You're not improving. But again, you go free agency. You better go free agency on defense then, Nick.
Yeah. And you will. I have zero doubt on that. Yeah.
Big time. Which is a luxury the Falcons haven't had in several years. Philip Hogginson coming in and saying, good morning, guys. My favorite morning show. Appreciate you.
Wow,
Thank you for coming in with a super chat, my friend. And Michael Ranquillo says Chicago Bears is a team to watch out for Draymond Jones. Just a quick programming note. And I might rebrand my channel so it doesn't have my name because I'm actually branching out. Parker Hurley is doing a Chicago Bears podcast on my channel. So always make sure it says, Bears Pod with Parker Hurley. So check him out. He's Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:00 Eastern time, 5:00 Central. Chicago Bears podcast on youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. They were talking about after Daron Payne went off the board, the Draymond Jones is maybe their number 1 pick. Their number 1 priority, and they got cash. Yep. They've got almost $100 million in money right now. Son and Draymond wouldn't even put a dent in their available money, Nick.
Yeah, they could load it because of the cap space they have available. They can manipulate those cap hits and make it so that almost no team could sign him. Right? They could front load the deal, which typically you don't see. But with all these teams with limited cap space, if you put it his first year and have his cap hit be, let's say 24, and then it goes down after that, who has 24 million in cap space? Right? That's just not besides the Falcons and a few teams, but they can
say that though. And you look at, let me see if I look at Spot Rack right now and I go to Cap Tracker and I scroll all the way down here to the New Orleans Saints and they're 26 million in the hole. And they signed Derek Carr.
But I bet you the contract is set up where this year 1 cap hit is tiny.
15 million maybe.
Yeah. But you could have the Bears with how much cap space they have this season be massive on that first year, which means that other teams then wouldn't do it. I mean, Draymond maybe would rather prefer that because then they can go high on the guarantees, get those guarantees over with, and then just manipulate the cap in that way. And we got Jason Heller coming in saying, we want Ridder cap space on our picks more than we want Lamar. I'm not here.
Or probably Jason and Chris and all y'all and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, or that you would want Ridder more than you'd want to give up 2 firsts for any quarterback in this draft, which is likely what it would cost you.
The other thing, just coming back to it, I know we're rehashing conversations, but if you are interested, if you make your bed with Ridder this season, you're probably making your bed with him throughout the duration of his contract, unless you're giving up unbelievable draft capital, more than you'd have to give up to get Lamar to move up in the draft. You are picking 8 overall this year, and the ability to trade up for a quarterback in the top 10 in the future, I think, is probably not as likely over the next couple of cycles. You never know. And guys like Derek Carr become available, but do you want to be the team paying Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, who else just got paid? Geno Smith. Yeah, do you want to pay those guys? Mm-hmm. Would you rather do that, or would you rather take a top 10 quarterback? Because if betting on Ridder this season is a bet on the next 3 seasons.
That said, this is a two-way street, Nick. If Ridder succeeds, you're happy. You're happy with Ridder. You're okay with that. If Ritter does not succeed, you're back in the top 10 again.
I think that this infrastructure is good enough, and with the salary cap that you have this year, and the NFC South being dreadful looking right now, that I think that even if Ritter fails next season, the defense is going to be that much better. You are establishing a pretty good system here. I just think the floor is too high on this Falcons team to be picking the top 10. Also, I don't think next year is going to be set up where you have 4 quarterbacks worthy of a top 10 pick. I think it's going to be a mad race for 1 and 2. And then after that, you Quinn Ewers, JJ McCarthy, just question marks. Unlike this season, we're predicting a year out. We don't know. Things can change. But this year, it's a unique opportunity with 4 quarterbacks who are up there. And it's kind of Zach Phillips. I mean, maybe I'm jaded both ways. Trade for the veteran. Oh, it's scary. Sit there and hope for a quarterback you took late. And oh, man, he's got tools. Maybe he'll do it. Feels like hoping with Locke, right? Like you made your evaluation on that already. You still want to gather more information. But if you are in position and you love a guy, don't overthink it. The third round pick you took last year should have no impact on your evaluation of the current crop of available quarterbacks.
I agree. Again, but I think the evaluation on Ritter is going to be enough that they don't want to overspend on a quarterback.
Yep.
Now, if one of those guys falls to 8, maybe, but I don't think, I think the evaluation of Ritter has given you the luxury of not having to overspend on a quarterback. This is my obligatory time to say that's why I was for Justin Fields at number 4 instead of Kyle Pitts, because it's expensive to get franchise quarterbacks. And I mean, you've got a chance to take one when you don't have one, when yours is 36 years old and creaky and on a ridiculous contract like Matt Ryan was. You take his successor.
Yeah.
It's either here or there. Ritter may end up being the guy.
I want to get to Joe Cannon here real quick. He's asked about Shadur Sanders. I'll be honest, I didn't watch much Jackson State in general. He's on the list, though, for next year with CU. So we'll see how he plays at CU. Other guys out there, there's some interesting Pac-12 quarterbacks that are returning next year. Bo Nix, I know that he kind of sends a shiver down your spine as an Auburn fan, but he was really good at Oregon last year. I mean, just he has tools. He does. And then Michael Penix was awesome.
I know, but then he comes back and, he just lays an egg against Georgia. I mean, it's what is the level of, how is he against the level of competition with Bo Nix? We'll see.
I think we're talking late round 1 through like day 2 somewhere right now is his range. He's not going to be a lottery pick quarterback, but
they can certainly improve, Nick. That's what these coaches are getting paid millions and millions of dollars for, is not just recruiting, but to actually see them get better and to mature. And he was thrown in as the savior at Auburn where his dad played. And it may have been too much for him at the time. And they can be humbled. We've talked about it with coaches being humbled and coming back and improving. And Joe, I haven't seen Sanders throw, plain and simple. I didn't watch Jackson State. You hear Deion Sanders and you just think, okay, speedy athlete. I don't think, arm, even though he had a pretty damn good arm. He was an outfielder. He's a major league outfielder. The guy could throw. Maybe the second best athlete of our generation behind Bo Jackson, who was a similar athlete, just 40 pounds bigger, 30 pounds bigger. So that's for me. So I'll keep an eye on him, Joe. James comes in with a great comment, comes in as a Browns fan. He says, I would almost guarantee a team comes forward for Lamar Jackson. Owners, I'm not sure which WC owner is. We'll decide.
Washington Commanders.
Okay, Washington Commanders. Yeah, who's their owners? We'll decide he's worth the price. In the end, Cleveland looked like geniuses. Free agents just starting. A lot of them looking like geniuses will depend on how well Deshaun plays over the next. We're 1 year into that contract already. It was a 5-year deal, and I'm for guaranteed contracts, 100% for guaranteed contracts. That again, non-guaranteed contracts and salary caps, that is more collusion against the NFLPA and the players union. Their union isn't nearly as strong as Major League Baseball's. The Major League Baseball has the best players union in the United States. Normally I'm for an open market, but this isn't an open market system in sports in the United States. It's a monopoly, and you need protection for the players. I'm for the guaranteed contracts. Absolutely. So you don't have to, I'm with you on this one. It's the most dangerous sport, of the professional sports, with the least amount of player flexibility and protection. So, and like we said, James, I agree with you. I said it earlier. It only takes one. It takes one team to come in here. I'm reminded of the fact, Nick, this will be too old for you. The Braves were a big money team in the early 90s, and Alex Rodriguez was hitting free agency, and there was a real thought he was coming in to Atlanta. And then the Texas Rangers came and made a market-busting offer for him. They did it, and all of a sudden, there was some word that the Braves offer wasn't even close, and they said our offer was pretty damn good until Texas did what they did. So it only takes one team to do that for sure. So we will see. And like I said, how willing are you to go through and sit down and go through all of the negotiations and do all that stuff with Lamar Jackson, knowing that the Baltimore Ravens can just match it? That to me is a little bit, it's a little dishonest, Nick. The whole thing's a little bit dishonest for me.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be fascinating. We'll get more tidbits of information, and the fact that the Ravens can match. I think it's a good situation for the Ravens as well, because apparently there was some hurt feelings, and there's always going to be hurt feelings when players are negotiating their own contracts. Well, now it's just not the exclusive negotiation between the Ravens and Lamar. It's the league and Lamar. So they can just come in and be like, listen, all the hurt feelings and the personal stuff and what the contract is, we didn't dictate your market. The market dictated your market. So that way, at least maybe from the Ravens' perspective, can smooth some things over following Lamar Jackson's new contract.
And over 50% of drafted quarterbacks are busts. That's kind of the whole first round. So when we were talking about on the Broncos channels, Nick and I do a lot on Mile High Huddle for the Denver Broncos. When they were talking about, I don't want to give up a pick for the right coach. I'm like, you guys are out of your freaking minds. The right coach is so much more worth a first round pick, especially one at 28. Like, there may be half a dozen draft picks in the history of this game that are worth getting the right coach. So it's, again, the draft picks are overrated. That's why free agent quarterbacks are paid so much. A long time ago, the highest paid player in the NFL was the number one overall pick that was a quarterback. That was insane. That was when it was completely backwards, for sure.
Sam Bradford, right? That was a wild time. Joe also says Sanders should be a top quarterback next year. Watch a lot of JSU, and his arm's incredible. We'll see. I have not watched him very much. I can tell you that it'd be pretty hard pressed for me to put him in the category of Caleb Williams and Drake May from North Carolina right now, just based on what I've seen in the prototype tools that they have. But we have a full year of tape to watch, and typically, as the microscope gets over those guys longer, you start to pick away at things. A year ago right now, we're like, okay, this quarterback class in 2022 is terrible. Wait till next year. You got CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. Well, CJ Stroud, they're still at the top. It's not like the 2022 class. Everybody was right in saying, like, hey, this quarterback class doesn't have the first round picks compared to next year. Turns out that was true. But still, you start to nitpick on things the longer that you have exposure. So we'll see what happens with Sanders. It's an open mind, a fresh book, fresh start in Pac-12 football for now for Colorado. So it'll be interesting.
And including Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. There was talk last year that the first four guys in this draft would have been the first four guys if they were available last year. And one of those questions, Kevin, welcome in. Appreciate you coming in on Facebook. He says, where do you think Jalen Carter goes? I still think, if I was predicting, which is what you're asking, I would still predict the Colts moving up and switching with the Bears, and the Bears still taking him at 4. I don't think the news around Jalen Carter is going to affect his draft stock at all.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm enough about the specifics of everything with Carter. Obviously, the rest wasn't good, and being a warrant on him, he was lying to the cops about his involvement.
None of that's in there. He's in there for racing and reckless driving, which, again, if you are in an accident with a fatality and you've got those charges, there's a chance they can tack on a vehicular manslaughter charge on that too. Then we're talking, we've got problems.
Yeah.
I think if you do, as long as his background check clears for the rest of the stuff, is like, okay, yeah, this guy's an alcoholic or anything like, none of that comes out, and this was kind of a one-off, um, stupid thing where that had tragic consequences. I think he doesn't fall out of the top 5.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think it does push him down in the conversation a little bit, just
I do
because.
too. So, but
Yeah,
not enough to me that he falls out. It'll affect his stock. Where let's say he was a must buy. He was a 99. Now he's a 97.
yeah.
But at 97 still higher than the next guy below him. I still think he goes top 5.
I agree. I could see him falling into the top 7. I could see him moving a bit, just like with the quarterbacks, with how they had shown this class. And also, apparently, one of the biggest takeaways I had from the combine is that Tyree Wilson is up there. He
Yep.
is. He should be in the conversation. Apparently, the NFL views him just in the same conversation with Will Anderson
Mhm.
and Jalen Carter, which to me, if you have those two guys, Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson, and then Jalen Carter, who now you have questions about the decision making and I mean, you're talking about investing big millions of dollars in a guy, and then the opportunity cost. I think it's at least a little bit of a conversation. But he could fall, and he could fall to 8 to the Falcons, and which would be wild, as Chris Walker talks about here.
Yeah, I agree with you to that sense. So I will say, top 5 or at least top 3 positional players. How about that?
Yeah.
Because I mean, you could have quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, 4. That's
Hmm.
not impossible.
Mm-mm.
It's not impossible for quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to hear a lot of talk and a lot of smoke and a lot of BS about the order of those quarterbacks, because there's 2 teams in there that don't need a quarterback. So they're going to talk about, oh, we might want to take one. You've already heard it from the Bears. And they're going to try and pump up the value as much as they possibly can. And then there's 2 teams moving up that are trying to downplay the quarterbacks. No, we don't really like Bryce Young anyway. We really like Will Levis. So when you talk about the order, the how many different possible orders there can be, it's 4 to the exponent. So 4 times 3 times 2, 12, 24. There's going to be 24 orders of what order these quarterbacks are going to be in over the course of the next couple of weeks. I'm going to get to Chris in a second. I want to hit Brandon first real quick. Brandon asked, where does Aaron Rodgers end up? Last year, I said the Green Bay Packers. This year, I think he's on the move, Nick. I think his time is up in Green Bay.
Sounds like they're done with him. Also, it sounds like they want to see what they have in Jordan Love. He looked pretty good last year. Honestly, in hindsight, the Broncos would have been better off maybe trading for Jordan Love to pair with Nathaniel Hackett for the cheap and just rolling the dice there. It's hindsight, I know, but
If it would have changed the command structure was as big of a problem as anything, was the
yeah.
fact that Nathaniel Hackett either didn't have the stones or his legs were cut out from to put his big boy pants on and take charge of that team. The command structure, you wouldn't have had that problem with Jordan Love that you did with Russell Wilson coming in and supposedly running the show.
Yeah, I mean, it was talking about Russell Wilson holding his own meetings and giving out like notes and game plans and stuff that was totally against what the coaches had been working on like on Friday before the game, and just like it was totally dysfunctional in Denver last year. It's unbelievable. I wish there'll probably be a 30 for 30 on it if it is as rough as it is again this year.
I think Nathaniel Hackett, as much as he basically said it, you could read into what he was saying. Every time there was a question, everything was always about Russell Wilson. It was almost like he was saying, "This is about Russell Wilson. This isn't about me. I have no I have no say here. I'm just up here to talk." Everything he'd say, he'd shed that around by saying, "We got to do what we can to protect Russ. We got to make sure that Russell Wilson's comfortable. We got to do all that." It was. I think if you go back knowing what you know when you watch it at the time, go back and watch it. All you're going to hear is, "I have no say here."
And the hand is actually up, causing him to do that. Yeah.
But Brandon, Aaron Rodgers, Nick, in January, our first show on when we started doing this he said New York Jets. He's meeting with the Jets. Jets make a lot of sense. So Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets.
The other team, I think the Raiders also have a chance as well. The Raiders team, I think on that show I said Tom Brady to the Raiders, but the Raiders probably want to make a splash at quarterback. It sounds like the Raiders are interested in Lamar Jackson. Well, if they're interested in Lamar Jackson, why wouldn't they also be interested in Aaron Rodgers, where his buddy Devontae Adams is the quarterback? So Raiders, I would throw a little bit of cash on that. Also, I know a few Packers sources that I mentioned the
Oh, you're breaking
Dolphins.
up on me, so I'm gonna have to fill real quick, and then we'll come back with the Packers sources. There we go. The Packers folks are saying Rodgers and what? Go.
Potentially the Dolphins. Dolphins. Sorry, there's a delay.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a delay. Yeah, the Twitter sphere is saying no way. They're happy with Tua. We'll see. We'll see. I think they'll probably have. Again, I think the Tua, the quarterback, is the right guy for the Dolphins. He's walking a thin line of his health right now, Nick. I mean, I know they all are, but he's one more shot away from having really bad health problems if he doesn't already. You know, this stuff could, when he hits 35, 40 years old, this stuff could start re-manifesting. I worry for Tua. I do. Yeah. Chris Walker asks, if Jalen Carter drops to 8, do the Falcons take him? Nick?
Probably. It's one of those things where if he falls that far, you're like, okay, is there something else going on, given the tape and the quality and the position he plays? But I think that's probably a buck could stop there. I can't imagine the Raiders passing him unless the Raiders traded that pick like we've been talking about here. Given their propensity, is that the word? How often they've taken guys who have slid and have potential character issues or things like that in the past. It's kind of almost nobody does that as much as the Raiders. But not that Carter is I'm not full on burying Carter, but this is an incident that, should have a red flag on it at least. But definitely, if he falls to 8, you need help on defense. He could be the best defensive player in the class, and he's a versatile impact player, good against the run, good against the pass. He's an awesome prospect on the field.
4 quarterbacks go in the top 7. Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson. It only takes one more.
Christian Gonzalez, maybe.
Gonzalez.
Yeah, one of those offensive linemen.
Paris Johnson. Let's see, who else could possibly sneak into there?
Lucas Van Ness. I mean, he tested great. Yeah, Miles Murphy. So, I mean, it could happen. That's why I'm saying top 10, top 8.
It's not out of the question. I said I think he still goes top 5. I still think that, but would it totally surprise me to see him available at 8? No, I wouldn't be totally surprised. Should the Falcons take him at 8? Yes. Yes, they should. As long as they feel like he's not. Who was the guy that was it? Marlon Davidson, who showed up and, was a complete bust, second round, early third. I think he was second round pick. Mm-hmm. Admitted that he, was living the life with his newfound money. Hopefully these guys don't get to, they've got money in college now. Hopefully they're not getting that first huge check in the NFL and losing their minds. Hopefully they're a little more prepared to deal with that money, and hopefully they're offering classes for these athletes to money management, how to budget, how to invest, do all those things. That should be part of their curriculum. But yes, as long as they don't see Marlon Davidson out there, Chris Walker, Jalen Carter. I was for Jordan Davis last year. I thought he could have been a guy to plug right in the middle of that defense. So, yes, I think it's very possible.
Yeah, and he also asks if Tyree Wilson or Van Ness are available at 8, who the Falcons select. Sounds like Tyree Wilson is a tier above Van Ness. Van Ness is a really good prospect. His agilities for his size and the power in his hands is amazing, but Tyree Wilson is got more power in his hands than Van Ness even does, in my opinion. Or they're close, but Wilson, longer. So if Tyree Wilson falls there, it sounds like it's going to be him. It sounds like he's right up there. It wouldn't be shocking if he was the first defensive player drafted this class right now. Really, that's what I've heard talking to people at the combine after it fell out. The NFL really thinks Tyree Wilson is a unique, special talent.
I'm very interested for the Falcons at edge and Tyree in Lucas Van Ness. The Falcons just re-signed Lorenzo Carter. That was a move that on the Falcons podcast that Nick and I both said should happen. He was $2.5-3 million last year, a solid 4. One of the 4 at edge. Good player to have on your team, not overly expensive. That said, he's 255 pounds. Tyree Wilson and Lucas Van Ness are already 270 plus and similar athletes. Lorenzo's a great athlete. Length, size, they just don't have that. I think the last time they tried to go after that was Jamal Anderson, Arkansas, one of their top 5 worst draft picks ever. And if they could hit on that spot, it would solve a lot of problems. It would go a long way to improving a defense that needs an infusion of talent in a big way. Nick, we're right at 50 minutes. We're starting to wrap this thing up. I think we've hit on most of the topics I wanted to hit on, at least, but besides combine highs and lows, NFL combine highs and lows. You mentioned a couple of them, so let's touch on that again real quick over the next few minutes. Biggest performance, Ade, defensive lineman out of Northwestern. 6'1.5". Is his size, would his height push him down in the second or third round, or does he have a chance to really move up?
I think his tape is not good enough where I feel comfortable saying with him in the guaranteed first round, but I think he's going to be in one of those early second round picks. I'm curious to see. So a lot of teams that I know of were projecting him as a 3 technique type, but with that athleticism, maybe you see him at edge first. I mean, it's a more valuable position. He really can't hold up. Maybe he's somebody who in base downs is a edge rusher 7 technique, maybe even some stand-up stuff. And then in sub packages, you get him inside and you can do some twist and stunt stuff with him. But Adi had a freakish combine. He's small. Doesn't have incredible mass to him. He does have good length, 34-inch arm length. But we will see how it plays out with him. But yeah, I think he's going to go one of the first picks in the second round.
And Chris asks, there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
Any draft pick worse than Pere Jerry for the Falcons, Scott? Yes, actually, I did a top 5 worst draft picks video not too long ago. Let me see if I can find it. I'll dig it up. It's on my channel. Unfortunately, it's also sitting in a place I used to work. So they're getting the SEO for it. I didn't put Pere Jerry in the top 5. He was actually lower on the he was like a 27 or so. But Jamal Anderson, I think, was an 8 overall and just did nothing. But the worst pick the Falcons ever made was Bruce Pickens. He was a number 3 overall, and he wasn't in the league in 3 years. Cornerback. That was when the Big 8 was running wishbones, and the Falcons were taking defensive backs out of the Big 8. Nebraska guy. He was the worst. The other one I picked was Tony Smith, running back, Southern Miss. He was the guy that was received in the first round in a trade for Brett Favre. So when Brett Favre was sent to the Packers, they received a first-round pick, and they used it on running back Tony Smith, who had about 600 yards of total offense, all in his first year, and then was out of the league. So, yes, bad things. Cornerbacks. You mentioned Christian Gonzalez. How did Witherspoon, did he test at all? I don't remember. I don't remember hearing any buzz of him. Joey Porter Jr. was there. Those are 3 guys that could probably sneak into the top 10?
I wouldn't do Joey Porter Jr. personally. I think he is very much he has issues flipping and running with guys. He wants to keep everything in front of him and be a press corner. And I think at some point in the NFL, you're going to have to be able to flip your hips and play coverage and reactionary football as a cornerback. So I don't know if I would put him as he tested well with the jumps and stuff, but he's a little top heavy for me and how his movements are. Witherspoon is still number 2 for me, but I think there's more of a gap between Witherspoon and Porter in my book than there is between Porter and Banks, who was the other cornerback that I think really stood out here. He measured smaller than Maryland had him listed, but he tested extremely well, and I thought he looked great in the drills as well. So Deontay Banks, Maryland, is a name that we mocked him in our mock a week ago today. Probably, I think, about pick 18, pick 20. I think that's probably a good spot for him. He might even go a little bit higher, but he's really good.
Pollen's getting my nose. I apologize, y'all that are having to watch.
It's better than the coughs.
Yeah. How about Julius Brents?
Yeah.
Similar athlete, the guy that Seattle took last year, tall, fast.
Yeah, he's not.
It's
Tariq Woolen.
Tariq Woolen. He's not quite that tall. That said, he's 6'3", 198. He's got almost a 7-foot wingspan. It was 83 inches, a 6'6", 3 cone, which is elite. change of direction, 405 in the shuttle is very good, and then a 42-inch vertical leap. 11-6 broad jump. Physically speaking, that's one of the best performances in the draft, in the NFL Combine, for length, explosiveness, all of it.
Yeah,
How high could he go? Julius Brents, cornerback, Kansas State.
I think bottom third of the second round through halfway through the third round for him. And a big issue for me with him is that I think that you're not going to see off coverage with him with his size. I think he also is just given his where he's at is sometimes going to be a little bit stiff in that flipping his hips. It's the, what do they call it? It's the long time cornerbacks coach, Terrell Austin. They do a drill where you kind of like you go one way, and then you flip your hips completely and have to run the opposite way. He looked a little bit stiff in that one. And also the issue with Julius Brents is that he has almost zero ball production in his career. And that is extremely valuable in today's NFL, where it's not about as much stopping the other team. It's about taking the ball away. And he just, there's no ball skills that he's shown or instinct for the ball. So I think probably, and it's also a deep cornerback group. So I think mid-second, mid-third is probably the range he'll go, even though he tested great.
It's funny, though. You know, we had a lot of the same talk, and let me look up where he went, but I think he went all the way in the 5th, about Tariq Woolen last year.
Yeah.
A lot of the same concerns. And he did. He went in the 5th round, 153rd overall, and he was one of the best cornerbacks in this draft. Yep. When I start seeing, and that was a guy we were high on, you know, should he have gone in the 1st? We weren't saying that by any stretch, but I think we were mocking him in the 3rd at the latest a lot of the times. Julius Brent, if you're doing a redraft, how long does it take you to get to Tyreek, the Seattle Seahawks Tariq Woolen?
Top 15.
Top 15. Wow. Yeah. In a redraft. So do you make the same mistake on Julius Brents?
You have hindsight now with Tariq Woolen.
Well, exactly. But they're so similar physically.
I think that so Julius Brents will go earlier because he's more of a known quantity. He's had multiple years at Kansas State. He's not a flipping positions over to UTSA from wide receiver to cornerback. And he tested great, and he also looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl as well. I just think it's a deep cornerback class overall. I don't think he's going to fit every scheme. Also, and again, the ball production is a big red flag. Teams in today's NFL, you're looking to take the ball away, and he's not been able to locate the football, which in the Big 12 is wild because there's a lot of opportunities to play on the football. So that's I think it'll knock him down a bit. Again, mid-second round to mid-third round, that seems like a good spot for him. Really long, physical as well. Also, I can tell you from my connections at Iowa, asking about Julius Brents, I was heartbroken when he transferred from Iowa because I thought that he was a special talent. I mean, you can see the length on tape. As a true freshman, they got him out of Indianapolis, actually, where he had a good combine. But everybody's like, okay, we know he left because he got beaten out by Riley Moss, and the Hawkeyes had some other older vets that they like. So he left. It was not on bad terms. The coaching staff still speaks extremely highly of him as his character and his who he is as a person. So not somebody that, a lot of times you see transfers get out and it's kind of they badmouth him on the way out. They spoke highly of him on the way out, which I think is a feather in his cap as a transfer out. So good kid. Again, I think probably mid-second to mid-third for me with him, but we'll see.
All right. Well, he's definitely someone I'm looking forward to coming through and watching. He's sitting there at 2nd and 3rd round. I would be real interested. Again, you've got physical ability and not even just the explosive, the body type. It's unique. If it's not unique, it's pretty close. It's rare for sure. On that note, we're going to get out of here. I hope y'all had as much fun today as we did. This was a show I was really excited to do. There was just so much news. And we'll get more into draft and free agency opens up next week as we will get into it. And I'm sure some more guys will become available as cap cuts. Some more guys will be signed to some big contracts. We'll see what happens with Lamar Jackson over the course of the next week. Maybe nothing. I want to say thank you to our Super Chat superstars, Gary Palmer, Philip Hogginson. Thank you for helping to keep the lights on and keeping my forehead nice and shiny. Nick and I will be back tomorrow on Mile High Huddle, and we will be back on this channel, same bat channel, same bat time, Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern. So until then, thank you for everything, Nick. Thanks for everybody for coming in. Hit a like on the way out, and we will see you next time.
Peace.